The scanner said, "Impossible genetic match." The human said, "That's family." The medical station hummed with its usual quiet efficiency. Ji-won walked through the white corridors with his brother Yun beside him. They had done this walk 100 times before, but today felt different. Today was the genetic registry scan, a requirement for anyone working in deep space. "It's just a scan," Ji-won said, noticing his brother's nervous fingers tapping against his leg. "Takes 5 minutes. Then we can grab lunch at that noodle place you like." Hyun nodded but didn't stop tapping. He was an engineering specialist, brilliant with machines, but medical facilities always made him uncomfortable. The sterile smell, the cold lights, the way everything felt too clean and too quiet. They entered the medical bay where Mirai waited. She was Velnari with smooth blue skin and 4 precise fingers on each hand. Her species had invented the genetic scanners used throughout the galaxy. When a Velnari said something about genetics, you listened. "Good morning," Mirai said, her voice calm and professional. "Please, Hyun, step into the scanner." The scanner looked like a tall glass cylinder. Hyun stepped inside and the machine hummed to life. Blue light washed over him from head to toe, then back again. The whole process took less than 3 minutes. "Done," Mirai said. "Now you, Ji-won." Ji-won took his brother's place in the scanner. The blue light felt warm against his skin, almost pleasant. He watched through the glass as Mirai studied her screen, then frowned. That frown made Ji-won's stomach tighten. "Is something wrong?" he asked as he stepped out. Mirai didn't answer immediately. She touched her screen several times, her frown deepening. "The machine says there's an error. Let me run Hyun's scan again." Hyun groaned but stepped back into the scanner. This time Ji-won watched Mirai's face carefully. When the scan finished, her frown became something else. Confusion. Maybe concern. "What's the error?" Ji-won asked. Mirai looked up at them both. "The scanner says you two share only 12% genetic markers." Silence filled the room. Ji-won waited for Mirai to smile, to say she was joking. But Velnari didn't joke about genetic data. "That's impossible," Ji-won said. "We're brothers." "Yes, I know," Mirai said slowly. "That's why this makes no sense. Brothers should share at least 50%. You share less than random strangers would." Hyun laughed, but it sounded forced. "Your machine is broken." "Velnari scanners don't break," Mirai said. And there was no arrogance in her voice, just stating a fact. "But I'll run both scans again. And again. Until we understand what's happening." She ran the scans 3 more times. Each time the result was the same. 12%. The number sat on the screen like an accusation. By the 5th scan, Mirai had called in 2 other medical technicians. They whispered to each other in their own language, pointing at screens and shaking their heads. "This is ridiculous," Hyun said, his voice rising. "We grew up together. Same house, same parents, same everything." He pulled out his datapad and started swiping through photos. "Look, here's us at my 10th birthday. Here's Ji-won teaching me to ride a bike. Here's our family vacation to Jeju Island when I was 12. Mirai looked at the photos, but her expression didn't change. "I don't doubt your memories or your records. But the genetic data is clear. According to our scanners, you two cannot be siblings." "Then your scanners are wrong," Ji-won said firmly. Before Mirai could respond, the door opened. Taeyang entered, his security uniform crisp and his expression serious. Ji-won knew him from the station gym, had shared drinks with him a few times. But right now Taeyang wasn't looking at him like a friend. "Medical Chief Mirai called me," Taeyang said. "She says we might have an identity fraud situation." "Identity fraud?" Hyun's voice cracked. "Are you serious?" "Genetic modification is illegal in most systems," Taeyang said, his hand resting on the stun weapon at his belt. "If someone altered your genetics to hide their real identity, that's a crime." "Nobody altered anything," Ji-won said, fighting to keep his voice calm. "We're brothers. We've been brothers for 28 years. This is just a machine error." "Velnari machines don't make errors," Mirai said again. Taeyang looked between the 3 of them. "I need to see all your documentation. Birth certificates, family registry, medical history, everything." Hyun's hands shook as he pulled up the files on his datapad. Ji-won did the same. They had nothing to hide because there was nothing to hide. They were brothers. The machine was wrong. But as Taeyang reviewed their files, his frown matched Mirai's. "Everything here looks legitimate," he admitted. "But genetic data doesn't lie." "People don't lie either," Hyun shot back. At least we're not lying. Mirai touched her screen again, bringing up a complex chart that meant nothing to Jiwon. I'm going to contact the Galactic Science Council. This is beyond anything I've encountered. If two humans can be siblings with only 12% genetic match, then everything we know about genetics might be wrong. Or your machine might be wrong, Jiwon repeated. The scanner has analyzed genetic material from 600 species across the galaxy, Mirai said. It has never been wrong. First time for everything, Hyun muttered. Taeyang crossed his arms. Until this is resolved, I'm placing both of you under medical quarantine. You can stay in your quarters, but you can't leave the station or return to duty. Quarantine? Jiwon felt anger surge through him. We're not sick. We're not criminals. We're just brothers trying to do our jobs. I'm sorry, Taeyang said, and he actually sounded sorry. But this is procedure. When genetic data conflicts with documentation this severely, we have to investigate. Mirai stepped closer to them. I believe you believe you're brothers, but science cannot be ignored. If you are truly siblings, then something about human genetics is fundamentally different from every other species we've studied. That needs to be understood. Jiwon looked at his brother. Hyun looked back at him, fear and frustration clear in his eyes. They had walked into this medical bay as brothers, with nothing to worry about except getting through a routine scan. Now they were quarantined, suspected of crimes, and being told by machines and aliens that their entire lives were impossible. Come on, Jiwon said quietly to Hyun. Let's go back to quarters. We'll figure this out. As they left the medical bay with Taeyang escorting them, Jiwon could hear Mirai already making calls. Her voice was urgent, speaking rapidly in her own language. In the corridor, Hyun whispered, What if they don't believe us? They will, Jiwon said, trying to sound confident. Truth always comes out. But as they walked back to their quarters, watched by security cameras and suspicious eyes, Jiwon wondered if truth was enough when machines said something different. The scanner had declared them impossible, but they were brothers, and nothing, not even the galaxy's most advanced technology, could change that fact. The scanner said, impossible genetic match. The human said, that's family. The rumors spread through the station like wildfire. By evening, everyone knew about the two human brothers who weren't really brothers, at least according to the scanners. People whispered in corridors. They stared when Jiwon and Hyun passed by. Humans were already considered strange by most alien species. They ate weird food, had odd social customs, and their bodies seemed fragile compared to many other races. Now apparently their genetics were impossible too. Jiwon tried to ignore the stares. He sat in his quarters reviewing the scan results for the 100th time, trying to find something that made sense. Hyun paced back and forth, unable to sit still. Mom's going to lose her mind when she finds out, Hyun said. As if summoned by his words, Jiwon's communication terminal beeped. Their mother's face appeared on the screen, her expression worried. Jiwon, Hyun. I got a very strange message from the medical station. Something about genetic testing? Jiwon explained the situation as calmly as he could. Dasam listened, her worry transforming into confusion, then into something fiercer. Protective. That's absurd, she said when he finished. I was there when both of you were born. I raised you both. Fed you. Changed your diapers. Stayed up all night when you were sick. You're my sons. You're brothers. We know, Mom, Hyun said, but the scanners say different. Then the scanners are wrong, Daesam said firmly. I'll send you every medical record I have, every photo, every document, whatever they need to see that this is nonsense. After they ended the call, Jiwon felt slightly better. At least their mother believed them. But belief wasn't science, and science was what the galaxy respected. The next morning, a man arrived at the station. His name was Kwan, and he was a xenobiologist from Earth's scientific delegation. He had kind eyes and moved with the careful precision of someone used to working in laboratories. I heard about your situation, Kwan said when he met them in a conference room, and I brought something interesting. He spread out documents on the table. Medical records, genetic charts, historical data. I've been studying human genetics in space environments for 5 years, and I've noticed something unusual. Mirai entered the room, followed by another alien, This one was tall and angular with silver skin that seemed to shimmer. His name was Vren, and he was from the Galactic Science Council. "Let me be clear," Vren said before anyone else could speak. "I came here because this situation is creating panic. Humans claiming that genetic science doesn't apply to them. It's dangerous nonsense." "With respect," Quan said calmly, "I don't think it's nonsense. I think it's just poorly understood." Vren made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The Velnari have studied genetics for 3,000 years. Humans have been in space for barely 200. You think you understand something they don't?" "I think," Quan said, "that the Velnari understand Velnari genetics perfectly, and Krithian genetics, and the genetics of 600 other species. But human genetics? We're different." He pulled up an image on the display screen. It showed 2 strands of DNA, but they looked nothing like the simple images from old textbooks. These were messy, chaotic, with pieces seeming to hang off at odd angles. "Human DNA is full of what we used to call junk," Quan explained. "Sequences that don't seem to do anything. Viral remnants from diseases our ancestors survived millions of years ago. Genetic code from species that don't even exist anymore." "All species have some non-coding DNA," Mireille said. "Not like humans," Quan replied. "Nearly half of human DNA is this old, dormant material. And here's what I've discovered. It's not always dormant." He pulled up more charts, showing genetic sequences changing over time. Environmental factors can activate or deactivate entire sections of human DNA. Stress, diet, air quality, radiation exposure. Things that would cause minor changes in other species cause massive changes in humans. "That's impossible," Vren said flatly. "DNA is the blueprint. It doesn't just rewrite itself." "Human DNA does," Quan said. "Or rather, which parts are active can change dramatically. The blueprint is still there, but different sections get highlighted or hidden." Jiwan leaned forward. "What does this mean for me and Hyun?" Quan turned to them. "When did you two start living separately?" The brothers looked at each other. "I went to military academy when I was 14, Jiwan said. Hyun stayed home and went to civilian school." "Different environments," Quan said. "Different stress levels, different food, different air filtration systems, different everything. For 14 years, your genetics were shaped by nearly identical environments. Then they diverged." "So our DNA changed?" Hyun asked. "Not the DNA itself," Quan explained, "but which parts are active, which parts are expressing proteins, which parts are switched on or off. The Velnari scanner doesn't just look at your genetic code. It looks at what that code is doing right now." He pulled up their scan results side by side. "Look here. You both have the same underlying sequences for immune response, but G1s are highly active, probably from military vaccinations and exposure to different pathogens. Hyun's are more dormant, replaced by different active sequences related to fine motor control and spatial reasoning." Mireille studied the screens intently. "You're saying they have the same genes but different expressions?" "Exactly. The scanner sees the expression, not the blueprint. To the scanner, they look like different subspecies because their active genetics are so different." Vren crossed his arms. "This is ridiculous. No species can have that level of genetic flexibility. It would be chaos. How could you maintain any kind of stable biology?" "We don't maintain stable biology," Quan said simply. "We maintain flexible biology. That's how humans survived Earth." He brought up images of ancient Earth showing ice ages and volcanic eruptions, droughts and floods. Other species evolved to fit one environment perfectly. Humans evolved to survive changing environments. Our genetics had to be flexible or we would have died out. "But you're in space now," Mireille said. "Controlled environments, stable conditions." "Except space is the most extreme environment humans have ever faced," Quan replied. "Different gravity, different radiation, different atmospheric mixes. Human genetics are responding the way they always have, by adapting." Vren shook his head. "Even if I accepted this theory, it doesn't explain the scale of difference. 12%? That's not adaptation, that's transformation." "Maybe," Quan admitted, "which is why I need to see their mother's genetic profile." Dasam's records arrived that afternoon. When Quan opened them, his eyes went wide. He checked them again, then a third time. "What is it?" Jiwan asked. Quan looked up at them. "Your mother's genetic profile is even more unusual than yours. She has active genetic sequences from 3 different human ethnic backgrounds that shouldn't naturally combine in a single generation." "What does that mean?" Hyun asked. "It means," Quan said slowly, "that genetic flexibility might run in your family, or it might be something all humans have that we're only now discovering." Vren stepped closer to the screen. "If this is true, if humans can change their genetic expression this dramatically, then every human in the galaxy needs to be rescanned. Every record needs to be updated. This changes everything. Or, Mireille said quietly, we need to change how we understand genetics." That night, Jiwan lay in his quarters, unable to sleep. Somewhere in this station, scientists were arguing about whether he and his brother were impossible, whether their mother was an anomaly, whether humans were different in ways the galaxy had never imagined. But none of that changed the simple truth. Hyun was his brother. They had grown up together, fought together, laughed together. They shared memories and experiences that no scanner could measure. The machine said impossible, but family said otherwise. The scanner said, impossible genetic match. The human said, that's family. Commander Yuna arrived on the station 3 days later. She wore the dark uniform of Earth Defense Force, and her face showed no emotion as she walked through the corridors. Jiwan had never met her, but he knew her reputation. She was the one they sent when situations got complicated. This situation had definitely gotten complicated. Your mother is being brought here, Yuna told them in a private meeting room. Against her wishes, I should add. But this is now a matter of galactic security. Security? Hyun stood up angry. We're not terrorists. We're just brothers trying to understand why a machine says we're not. Sit down, Yuna said, and her voice carried command. Hyun sat. This stopped being about you 2 days ago. Do you know how many humans have been flagged with genetic irregularities since your case became public? 47 families. 47. Jiwan felt his stomach drop. 47? All across the galaxy. People going in for routine scans and being told their genetics are impossible. Parents who don't match their children. Siblings who look identical but scan as strangers. Yuna sat down heavily. The Galactic Council is panicking. They're asking if humans are even a single species. Of course we are, Jiwan said. Prove it, Yuna replied. Because right now all the scientific evidence says otherwise. Their mother arrived the next day. Dasam looked tired and worried, but she hugged both her sons tightly before anyone could stop her. I don't care what any machine says, she told them. You're my boys. Quan met with Dasam privately for hours, running scan after scan. When he emerged, he looked both excited and troubled. Your mother's genetics are extraordinary, he told them all in the conference room. Not just unusual, extraordinary. He displayed her genetic map on the screen. To Jiwan, it looked like a rainbow. Colors scattered everywhere in patterns that seemed random. These sequences here, Quan pointed, are typically found in people from East Asia. These are from Northern Europe. These are from West Africa. All active, all expressing, all working together. My parents were both Korean, Dasam said quietly. As far as I know. I believe you, Quan said. But somewhere in your family line, these genes got activated. Maybe through environment, maybe through stress, maybe through something we don't understand yet. He brought up another image. And here's something else. These genetic markers, they shouldn't exist in humans at all. What do you mean? Mireille asked. I mean, they're not from any known human population. They're old. Really old. Possibly Neanderthal. Possibly Denisovan. Possibly from other extinct human relatives we haven't even discovered yet. Vren stood up. Are you telling me that humans are carrying active genes from extinct species? Yes, Quan said simply. All humans have these genes. Most are dormant. But in some people, like Dasam, they activate. Yuna leaned forward. Is this dangerous? Dangerous? No, revolutionary. Yes, Quan's excitement was clear now. Other species evolved by removing unnecessary genes, streamlining their DNA. Humans evolved by keeping everything. Every adaptation our ancestors ever had is still in our DNA, just waiting to be needed. But why would it activate? Mirai asked. Stress, Quan said. Environmental change. The human body sensing it needs tools to survive. Think about it. Humans went from living on one planet to spreading across the galaxy in just 2 centuries. That's an enormous environmental shift. He pulled up more data. I found records for Dasam's sister Bora. She died 10 years ago, but her medical records are still on file. According to the documents, they were identical twins. We were. Dasam confirmed. Quan displayed both genetic profiles side by side. But look at your active genetics. Completely different. You and Bora shared the same DNA, but your bodies activated different parts based on your different lives. Dasam stared at the screens. Bora worked in deep space mining. Harsh conditions, dangerous work. I stayed on Earth teaching school. Different stresses, different activations, Quan said. Your body activated genes for stable environment living. Hers activated genes for survival in extreme conditions. This is insane, Vren said. How can a species function if their genetics are this unstable? We don't see it as unstable, Quan replied. We see it as adaptable, Yuna spoke up. How long have you known about this? Quan hesitated. We've suspected for decades, but confirming it required comparing humans across many different environments. Space colonization gave us that data. So Earth's military knew, Yuna said, and it wasn't a question. We've been studying this. Yes, Quan admitted. We've known that humans change genetically based on environment. We didn't know how dramatic those changes could be, or how quickly they could happen. Daesam looked at her sons. Is this why you two are so different? I always thought you just had different personalities. It's more than personality, Mom, Ji-won said. Our bodies literally adapted to our different lives. I became better at fighting diseases because of military life. Hyun became better at fine motor control because of engineering work. And both changes happened at the genetic level. Quan added. Your bodies rewrote which genes were important and which weren't. Vren paced the room. The Galactic Council won't accept this. It goes against everything we know about biological stability. They'll say humans are too dangerous, too unpredictable. Dangerous? Hyun stood up. We're adapting to survive. That's not dangerous, that's smart. To you, perhaps, Vren said. But to species that have spent millions of years perfecting their genetic stability, you look like chaos. Mirai had been quiet, studying the data. Now she spoke. I think I understand something. Felnari genetics are perfect for our homeworld. We've optimized every gene for our environment. But if our world changed, we couldn't adapt. We would die. Exactly, Quan said. You're stable but inflexible. Humans are flexible but unstable. There's another issue, Yuna said. I've been getting reports from other human families. They're scared. Some are hiding from medical scans. Others are angry, saying the aliens are trying to label them as freaks. They're not freaks, Quan insisted. They're the future of genetics. Try telling that to the Galactic Council, Vren said bitterly. They're meeting tomorrow to discuss restrictions on human travel. Maybe even quarantine protocols for all humans. The room went silent. Ji-won felt cold. They want to lock us all on Earth? Some of them do, Yuna admitted. They're scared. When people are scared, they make bad decisions. Dasom stood up. My sons are not dangerous. Neither am I. Neither are any of the other 47 families you mentioned. We're just people trying to live our lives. I know, Yuna said. But fear doesn't care about reason. That night, Ji-won stood at the observation window looking out at the stars. Hyun joined him. Think they'll really quarantine us? Hyun asked. I don't know, Ji-won said. Maybe. They stood in silence for a while. Then Hyun said, the scanner was right, you know. We are different. Our genetics are different. Doesn't make us not brothers, Ji-won replied. No, Hyun agreed. It doesn't. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. Tomorrow, the Galactic Council would meet and decide humanity's fate. They would debate genetic stability and biological purity and all the scientific principles that said humans were impossible. But here, in this moment, 2 brothers stood together. Their genetics might be different, but their bond was real. The scanner said impossible. Their family said otherwise. And tomorrow, one of those truths would have to win. The scanner said, impossible genetic match. The human said, that's family. The news hit like an explosion. Within a week, the number of flagged human families jumped from 47 to over 300. Medical stations across the galaxy, were reporting the same thing. Humans whose genetics made no sense. Children who didn't match parents. Siblings who scanned as unrelated. Entire families whose DNA seemed to say they shouldn't exist. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from 200 species gathered in the Grand Chamber on the neutral station of Pinnacle 7. Jiwon and Hyun watched the broadcast from their quarters, knowing that what happened in that chamber would decide their future. A human representative named Jiho spoke first. He was from Kepler Station, one of the largest human colonies in deep space. His voice shook with anger. "You're treating us like we're diseased," Jiho said. 300 families are now under quarantine. Children are being taken from parents for testing. We're being told our genetics are wrong, as if we chose this. "Nobody chose this," one of the alien representatives replied. Its species was Taldrin, with 6 eyes and a voice like grinding stone. But genetic integrity is the foundation of galactic society. Every species must have predictable, stable genetics. Without that, how can we track diseases? How can we ensure compatibility for medical treatment? How can we maintain biological records? By accepting that humans are different, Jiho shot back. Different? The Taldrin made a harsh sound. "You're not different. You're chaos." The broadcast shifted to another location, a different quarantine facility. A young girl sat in a white room, crying. Her name was Minseo, and she was 9 years old. Her parents stood outside the room, unable to touch her, while medical staff ran scan after scan. "The child shares only 8% genetic markers with her parents," the facility doctor explained to the camera. "According to all known science, she cannot be their biological daughter." "But she is," Minseo's mother said, her voice breaking. "I carried her. I gave birth to her. She's mine." The camera zoomed in on Minseo's face, on her tears, on her small hand pressed against the glass that separated her from her parents. That image spread across every human colony. That image of a little girl, scared and alone, torn from her family because a machine said she didn't belong. And humans everywhere became angry. An old man appeared on screens next. His name was Dr. Sunwoo, and he had been studying genetics for 60 years. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp. "I want to tell you all something that might be hard to hear," Dr. Sunwoo said. "Humans are not like other species. We never have been." He displayed images of Earth from millions of years ago. Our planet went through cycles of extreme change, ice ages that covered continents, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, climate shifts that happened in just a few generations. More images appeared showing ancient human ancestors. Other Earth species went extinct during these changes. They were too specialized, too adapted to specific environments. But humans survived. How? He paused, letting the question hang. "We survived by being able to change. Not over millions of years, but over generations, sometimes even within a single lifetime." The presentation showed genetic diagrams. Human DNA is full of ancient adaptations: genes for surviving cold, genes for surviving heat, genes for digesting different foods, genes for resisting different diseases. Most species clean out these old genes, removing what they don't need. Humans kept everything. "Why?" someone in the audience asked. "Because we never knew what we might need next," Dr. Sunwoo replied. "Earth taught us that environments change. The genes that save you today might be useless tomorrow. So we kept them all, dormant but ready." He pulled up more recent data. And now we're in space. The most extreme environment humans have ever faced. Different gravity, different radiation, different atmospheric pressure. Our bodies are responding the same way they always have, by activating the genes we need. "But the scale of change," Mirai said from her seat in the audience. "Parents and children with less than 20% genetic match. That's not just activation, that's transformation." "Is it?" Dr. Sunwoo challenged. "Or is it just the first time we've measured genetic expression across such different environments? Think about it. A child born on Earth has different environmental stresses than a child born on a Mars colony. Different gravity affects bone development, muscle growth, even how blood vessels form. The body activates different genes to compensate. He showed a chart that made Jiwan's head hurt, and it's cumulative. The child born on Mars has those activated genes. If they grow up there, their body reinforces those activations. If they then move to a station with artificial gravity, new genes activate, old ones deactivate, layer after layer of adaptation. So humans in different environments become genetically different subspecies? Vren asked. No, Dr. Sunwoo said firmly. Because the underlying DNA is the same. The blueprint doesn't change. What changes is which parts are being used. Give that Mars-born child a few years on Earth and their genetics would shift back. Not completely, not instantly, but measurably. That's instability, the Taldran representative said. That's dangerous. That's survival, Dr. Sunwoo replied. And it's not dangerous to anyone but us. Our genetic flexibility only affects us. We're not spreading some genetic plague. We're just adapting to our own environments. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in argument. Some species were fascinated by the human revelation. Others were horrified. But one voice rose above the rest. What about families? The speaker asked. It was Mireille. She had left her seat and walked to the center of the chamber. I've been studying the human cases, she said, and I realized something. Humans define family differently than we do. For Velnari, for Taldran, for most species, family is genetics. Family is parents and children share specific markers. Siblings have predictable ratios. That's how we track lineage, inheritance, identity. She gestured to the screens, showing Minseo crying in her quarantine room. But humans don't define family by genetics alone. They define it by bonds, by choice, by who raised you, who taught you, who loved you. That's chaos, someone called out. Is it? Mireille asked. Or is it just different? She pulled up her own family records. In Velnari society, we have strict genetic castes. I am from the medical caste because my parents were both medical caste. My genetics confirm this. It's stable, predictable, orderly. She paused, and her voice grew softer. But it's also lonely. I can only partner with someone from my caste. I can only befriend certain people. I can only live in certain places, all because of my genetics. The chamber went quiet. Humans don't have that restriction, Mireille continued. A human from Earth can fall in love with a human from Mars. Their genetics might be different, but their bond is real. A human family can adopt a child from a different colony, different genetic expression, and call them family because they choose to. That's not scientific, Vren protested weakly. No, Mireille agreed. It's social, and maybe that's stronger than science. Dr. Sunwoo spoke up again. The Galactic Council wants to restrict human expansion until we can be genetically standardized. But standardization would kill us. Our strength is our flexibility. Our survival trait is our ability to adapt. Then how do we track you? The Taldran demanded. How do we keep records? How do we maintain order? You change your systems, Jiho said, standing up. You track us by our choices, not just our genes. You recognize that family is more than DNA. On the screen, Minseo was still crying, still separated from her parents. But something shifted in the chamber. Some of the alien representatives were looking at their own families, their own rigid genetic structures, and seeing them differently. The vote was called. The question, should humans be restricted until genetic standardization could be achieved? The chamber held its breath. The vote came in split exactly down the middle, not enough to pass restrictions, but not enough to fully accept humans either. The galaxy remained undecided. The scanner said, impossible genetic match. The human said, that's family. The split vote changed everything and nothing. Humans couldn't be restricted, but they couldn't be fully accepted either. For 3 weeks, the galaxy existed in an uncomfortable stalemate, while the Galactic Council debated, argued, and searched for compromise. Then the consensus announced their decision. Commander Yuna delivered the news to Jiwan and Hyun in person. Her face was grim. They're giving humanity 90 days, she said. Either we agree to genetic standardization protocols, or all humans will be restricted to Earth and existing colonies. No new expansion, No travel between systems without special permits. Essentially quarantine. Standardization? Hyun asked. What does that mean? It means genetic modification, Yuna replied. They want to lock down human DNA, remove the flexibility, make us stable like every other species. Jiwon felt sick. They want to change what makes us human. They want to make us predictable, Yuna corrected. And Earth's government is considering accepting. No, Jiwon said immediately. We can't. We might not have a choice, Yuna said quietly. If we refuse, humanity becomes isolated, cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Is that better? The question hung in the air like poison, but humans across the galaxy answered it. The response was swift and united. Every colony, every station, every human settlement sent the same message to the Galactic Council. No, not just no. Hell no. Jiho became the voice of that refusal. He appeared on broadcasts, in council chambers, anywhere people would listen. You're asking us to cut out our own hearts, he said. Our adaptability isn't a flaw. It's how we survived. It's how we thrived. It's who we are. The galaxy pushed back. More debates, more arguments. Some species supported humanity. Others demanded compliance. The Taldran threatened to close their trade routes. The Velnari warned of genetic contamination, though Dr. Sunwoo proved that was scientifically impossible. Then Minseo spoke. The 9-year-old girl appeared before the Galactic Council. Her parents stood behind her, finally allowed to be together after weeks of quarantine. Minseo looked small in the massive chamber, but her voice carried. My scanner says I don't match my parents, she said. It says the numbers are wrong. But I know my parents. My mom makes me soup when I'm sick. My dad helps me with homework. They read me stories at night. She looked up at the alien representatives. If my genes don't match but they raised me and loved me, aren't they still my parents? Silence filled the chamber. My teacher said family is who you share blood with, Minseo continued. But humans don't think that way. We think family is who shows up. Who stays? Who cares even when it's hard? One of the representatives, a Kalorn with crystalline features, leaned forward. But how do we define parentage without genetics? How do we track inheritance, medical history, legal responsibility? You ask us, Minseo said simply. You don't look at a machine. You ask who are your parents, and we tell you. That's not scientific, another representative protested. Maybe not, Minseo replied. But it's true. After Minseo spoke, something shifted. The debate changed from whether humans should be standardized to whether the entire galaxy's definition of family needed to expand. Mirai presented new research to the council. She had studied Velnari genetic records going back 1,000 years, looking for patterns. We removed genetic flexibility from our species deliberately, she explained. 2,000 years ago, Velnari genetics showed more variation. But we decided that variation was inefficient. So we standardized. And that was good, a Velnari elder said from the audience. It brought order. It brought loneliness, Mirai said softly. I looked at pairing records. Before standardization, Velnari formed bonds across genetic castes. After standardization, we could only bond within our designated groups. We became more stable and more isolated. She displayed data showing declining Velnari population numbers, increasing rates of genetic diseases that couldn't be corrected because the gene pool was too narrow. We optimized ourselves into a corner, Mirai said. We became so stable that we stopped adapting. And now we're slowly dying out because we can't change. The chamber erupted in shock. Other species began checking their own records, their own genetic histories. How many had chosen stability over flexibility? How many were now facing the same slow decline? Humans are chaotic, Mirai continued. But chaos means possibility. It means adaptation. It means survival. Dr. Sunwoo presented his final research. He showed human genetic data from Earth spanning 200 years, then data from space colonies, then data from the 47 flagged families. Every single human shows genetic flexibility, he explained. But the families being flagged are the ones adapting fastest. They're the canaries in the coal mine, showing us what all humans are doing on a smaller scale. He zoomed in on Jiwon and Hyun's genetic maps. These brothers grew up together. They should be similar. But their environments diverged and their genetics responded. Not randomly. Not dangerously. Purposefully. Jiwon's body activated immune responses for military life. Hyun's activated fine motor control for engineering. Their DNA gave them what they needed. But they're so different now, Vren protested. How can they still be brothers? Dasim stepped forward. She had been quiet throughout most of the proceedings, but now she spoke with a mother's authority. They're brothers because I raised them both, she said. They're brothers because they protected each other in school. They're brothers because when Hyun broke his arm, Jiwon carried him 3 miles to a hospital. They're brothers because they chose each other every day, even when their lives went different directions. She looked at the assembled aliens. You want to know how humans define family? It's not complicated. Family is who you choose to keep choosing. Genetics might bring you together, but choice keeps you together. But without genetic markers, the Taldran representative said, how do you prove relationship? How do you prevent fraud? The same way we've always done it, Jiho said, stepping up beside Dasim. Documentation, testimony, history, shared experiences, photos and videos and memories. We don't need a scanner to tell us who we love. The final vote was called, not whether to restrict humans, but whether to change galactic law to recognize non-genetic family bonds. It took 3 days of deliberation. The vote passed. Barely. But it passed. New protocols were established. Genetic matching would remain important for medical purposes, but it would no longer be the sole determinant of family relationships. Species could register family bonds based on choice and commitment, not just biology. Minseo was reunited with her parents permanently. The 300 quarantined families were released. The travel restrictions were lifted, and Jiwon and Hyun's brotherhood was officially recognized despite what any scanner said. 5 years later, Jiwon stood at the window of his office. He was chief medical officer now, overseeing a station with 12 different species. The genetic scanners had been updated, reprogrammed to account for human flexibility. Hyun visited from his engineering assignment on Mars. They met for dinner, and Hyun looked different. Taller somehow, his bone structure slightly changed by years in lower gravity. A scan would show even less genetic similarity now than before. Think we'd still match as brothers? Hyun joked, knowing the answer. Scanner doesn't matter, Jiwon replied. Never did. They talked about their lives, their work, their mother back on Earth. They talked about the changes in the galaxy, how more species were questioning their own genetic restrictions. How Mirai had started a movement among Velnari to restore genetic flexibility to their species. We started something, Hyun said. We just lived our lives, Jiwon corrected. The galaxy noticed. That night, Jiwon reviewed the updated medical protocols. Where genetic matching used to be required for family registration, there was now a simple question. Who do you consider family? And a space for the answer. On Earth, Dasom received a letter from the Galactic Council. It thanked her for her testimony and informed her that she'd been cited in 14 academic papers about the nature of family bonds. She laughed, filed the letter away, and went back to teaching her students. On Kepler Station, Minseo studied xenobiology. She was 16 now, planning to become a doctor who specialized in genetic diversity. When people asked about her famous testimony, she shrugged and said, I just told the truth, and across the galaxy, when alien species looked at humans and asked how they could call someone family without genetic proof, humans smiled and gave the same answer. That's family. We don't need a scanner to tell us what we already know in our hearts. The machines had said impossible. Humanity had said family, and in the end, family won, because some bonds are stronger than genetics, deeper than DNA, and more real than any scanner could ever measure. Some bonds are chosen, and those are the ones that matter most.